that's one of the things I loved about our coaching experience with him, and looking forward to doing this more and more, is you just get to actually sit there. Like for me, I get to sit there and answer questions I've never thought about, or answer them in a way that I never had an opportunity to do.
Yeah.
And actually really understand, well, what is the core thing we're looking for?
Yeah.
Like how are we going to get there?
Yeah, there's so many.
I mean, it's coaching in cars, man.
A lot of limiting beliefs out there, thinking, how in the world am I going to accomplish something like that?
Not dissimilar to anybody.
The greatest risk we were afraid of that did not come to fruition is...
If I started a new business tomorrow, the first thing I would do is hire a coach.
All right, so welcome back to Coaching in Cars. I have a super special guest. Patrick Rogers is with me, and he is SmartPro investor, but also owns his own financial practice here in the Greenville area. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Patrick, who you are, a little bit about you personally, and then just tell me quickly about what the business that you own and operate is.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Patrick Rogers, born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina. Right now, as a career, we own a business, independent financial planning practice, part of a much larger company called SmartPro Financial. We got about 95 or so advisors nationwide. One of our unique things is we are the largest provider of endorsed financial advisors with Dave Ramsey's organization. So we're all Smart Investor Pros with his group. Been in the business for about coming up on 8 years actually this summer. So that's kind of crazy how time flies.
Like, what made you start being a financial advisor? Because I know you didn't really come from that background.
Right.
So
I actually went to school for mechanical engineering, and even that was kind of a pivot from what I was originally going to do, was going to go into pharmacy like my dad did.
Yeah.
He's a small business owner, or he was while he owned his business. So I've always been around, like the entrepreneurial environment, and my original plan was, once I decided not to go into pharmacy, was go get an engineering degree, get out of school, go get my PhD in automotive engineering from Clemson. It's kind of crazy because I'm a Gamecock. And then start a business in the automotive realm. And just to be quite frank, I got really tired of school. And I did some industry internships right before my senior year in my bachelor's degree, and realized that maybe I didn't want to keep going further and just try to figure it out. Also, I met a girl that I really, really liked my senior year, and decided to go get a job, get married, do all the normal domestic things, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But when I first got out of school, having some background, being in kind of an entrepreneurial environment in the household, I really just did not love corporate. It did not feel like you were rewarded for your efforts. It didn't feel like you were ever given an opportunity to really, excel or achieve or do anything that, could make a real difference, which is really the reason I got into engineering to start with. It was like, I want to change the world. You want to fix things, want to solve problems, help a lot of people, and have ultimately what I would say is impact and influence in making the world a better place. And that was not further from the truth. Like, there's nothing that can be further from the truth of like what I did with that first job out of school. And just during that process, my first 2 years out of school, my fiance at that time, Haley, and I started talking about, like, is this what we want to do? Why are we continuing to do the same old thing and expect different results? And we started, meeting with different people. We actually sat down with a few different financial advisors, and that really led to our situation today of actually getting in the business, because we're doing pretty well. We're 23 years old, about to get married. We actually ran a good budget, had like $4,000 a month in discretionary income to play with, no debt, some money in savings, and just trying to figure out, well, how do we essentially, kind of like everyone that's in the FIRE movement today, is like basically hate the standard procedure, don't want to stay in corporate the rest of your life. How can I get out of this as fast as possible? And we didn't take the traditional FIRE route of just continuing to work in the suck and just save and invest too much. Instead, we were shown an opportunity by meeting with a bunch of advisors that we could actually get into this business and make a real difference. I think one of the key things about that, though, was, and this goes back to those meetings we had with the advisors, is we sat down with 3 different guys, And it was a combination of, the first guy said, well, you should probably just buy these insurance policies from me, which is just like the freaking classic financial advisor. Like, everyone who thinks of an advisor is, oh, this person's going to sell me product, right?
Yep.
So that's exactly what happened. And of course, it was also the acquaintance from college. We didn't really know. He signed up for the mentorship program at this big mutual company. Like, that was the first experience. Which, he did show us, we should probably get some life insurance. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Some good term life, that kind of stuff. Didn't buy it from him, but we kind of got some awareness.
He didn't give you bad advice. He just didn't give you the unstandard advice.
Yeah, well, it was very much a transaction.
Yes.
It wasn't a relationship. It wasn't an experience. It was just the transaction of, hey, like, you should probably do this. And it was good advice, but it wasn't to help us align ourselves with our really big long-term goals. Second meeting we had was with actually my parents' former advisor, or my in-laws' former advisor. And, he kind of said the same thing. He's like, hey, like, y'all are on the right path. Keep investing in your 401k, maybe open a Roth IRA, do some things here, that kind of stuff. And then call me in 5 years when you leave your job, roll over your accounts. And I was like, again,
transaction.
It's transaction. Yeah. It's just all about, hey, like, do this standard model, and eventually you'll get where you want to go.
Yeah.
But no proactive coaching, no proactive conversation, all that kind of stuff. And then we met with my parents' advisor at the time, and he actually showed us an opportunity. He showed us that we could actually get into the industry, pretty low barrier to entry also, and we could help people in a real tangible fashion. And that's ultimately like what I was looking for, right? Like in engineering, it's all problem solving and trying to have a bigger impact and influence.
Yeah.
And to me, like, I'd say that really God led us to that conversation where it was, we have this desire, and I have this training from, problem solving and data analysis and all this kind of stuff. And I'm also not like your standard Fogamier engineer. Yeah. Right? Like, I'll say that about myself. And I feel like God just showed us, like, hey, we have all these things here. Let's just put them together.
Yeah.
And that's how ultimately we decided to get in this industry and start going down that path.
Yeah. And you fast forward, several years down the road now, you have employees on your team. It's not just you anymore.
Right.
I don't want to give away too much personal information. I don't think you'd care, but Haley is basically a support system for you and the family. She's not, she doesn't have like standard employment outside of your guys' business.
Works harder than all of us.
Probably does. Canva expert.
That's right.
But then also, like, you've built this incredible business where when you told me, what you were managing by yourself, I was like, dude, there's whole teams that do that at a pretty good level, and you're doing it still at a high level with you and your small team, which is awesome, at the end of the day. And then you've also got other advisors in town that you're connected with that do the same thing that you do, that you're helping and mentoring them through the process of becoming a really good strategic advisor as well.
Yeah.
Right? So you got Josh, and you've brought on a couple people now.
Yeah, we got, so Josh, I'd say he's kind of like a partner for me in a way. We came in similar times. We got Angel, Joseph, a couple other guys a little bit further out of town, Dave, Steven. But yeah, we're trying to build that like huddle mentality, the team mentality, pushing each other, always raising the bar.
Yeah.
I never want to lower the bar. There's over 300,000 licensed, quote, financial advisors in the U.S. Really big air quotes on that, by the way. There's over 300,000 people. Like, it's a bell curve. Yeah. You've got the majority of them are average. You got a bunch of them that are terrible, and you got a select few that are excellent. Yeah. Right. And we're trying to make sure at least everything coming out of our office is on that tail end on the excellent side. Yeah. So always trying to push that up and grow it.
Yeah, and I'll talk about my experience with the financial advisor world and how I got led to you, which ultimately I think that there was a lot of faith and God things going on there, which has turned into something incredible. But I put in my, Ramsey inquiry on the website. I got my 15 calls in 15 minutes. Yeah, like literally, seconds. Dude, it was insane. Like my phone blew up, which, by the way, like somebody's got to realize that if I pick up the phone on the first one, the next 14 are going to voicemail, you know, like, but anyways, I got one voicemail and I got one text message, and then the other 13, you know, never followed up with me or anything like that. So obviously missed opportunity for you other 13 that are local and you called me. If you would have followed up, you might have had a better shot.
That's right.
You know, but Patrick called me, set a meeting time, and just your approach going into talking to me and my wife, and you could just tell that it was a different experience all around than all other financial advice that I've ever been a part of, whether it's a wealth firm or an individual or, you know, a large corporation. You could just tell that it was a different interaction all around. And then you actually are the person who connected me with Colin through a weird set of circumstances. You just messaged me one. I actually came to you and I was like, hey, I need to pull 50 grand out to go be an EOS implementer. And you're like, hey, before you do that, I might know somebody who knows somebody who might be able to help you. And then all of a sudden I'm on a phone call with Colin and the team at Exit Momentum, and then, you know, the rest is history. Hires me as a coach, and then comes full circle to where you and I start working together. Right. Like, just such a I don't want to say random or coincidental, like there was a purpose to all of those things, but how it happened is just, it's incredible.
And I think there's some more like really important details there. Is even when we had that conversation, I think Colin was in town.
Yeah,
and you guys
working out
meet.
with Nick
right
at the time that you told me. We didn't get to meet
Small
in person,
world.
but I was on a text message thread within like 10 minutes of you making the intro. Nick worked fast.
Oh, yeah.
And
Great
then I'm on a phone call the next day with Colin, and, you know, like I had Colin on here and I go, what were your thoughts when Nick messaged you and said, hey, I might have a potential coach for you? He's like, wasn't going to work out. I was like, yep, I figured that's what you were going to say. And I was like, but here we are. But yeah, what an incredible journey. And then you've obviously introduced me to a ton of people locally, which I'm super appreciative of. But also, you know, we've gotten the opportunity to build a sales process together throughout this journey, which has been incredible. I know you and Josh are excited about it. But yeah, man, what a journey. It's been great.
Yeah, no, I think that it's really just a testament back to, you know, this whole process, the whole, like, our relationship, getting to know each other, you know, connecting and finding these other things. Like, I feel like a lot of life is just a bunch of circles that eventually become Venn diagrams.
Yeah,
right?
And
like,
there's the overlap.
There's the overlap there. And it's interesting, like, even just all the connections and people that, you know, you've mentioned over the past few months, it's like people I've met during COVID.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't necessarily have a personal relationship with all these people, but just there's definitely a subculture or like sub environment in the Greenville area, Greenville-Spartanburg area, of just entrepreneurs that are actually trying to do things. Like, it's not just, you know, your standard person that runs a pressure washing company and he's happy making $100,000 a year. No, you have guys that are trying to make like $1.5 million by growing and scaling their business and putting the right process, the right things in place. And it's not just to have more money, it's to have that impact, right? Like to be that name in the community and be the connector. And I know you had Jordan on here, and I remember him talking about, like, his people reach out to him for lawn care.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff.
Well, and he's so active in the community and with his church and all of that. It's like people trust him. He's like this face of trust. You know, obviously he owns his own business, which is, you know, physical therapy, which, by the way, Limitless is incredible. He gave me a tour. I was on the podcast. I think you were on the podcast with him.
We're doing it on Friday.
Yeah, there you go.
On Friday. Yeah.
So, you know, just great guy all around. But I agree. Like, there's this group of business owners here in town that are all about connecting you with other business owners that are like-minded. And then there's like this outsiders group that's like hesitant to make introductions for you, and they don't want to like put their name on the line. And it's like, I want to be in the group that is saying, hey, I like this person, I trust this person, and you got to know this person. And I feel like I found that circle with, you know, you, Adam, Peter, like all of these people. It's been incredible, the friendships that have been built throughout this journey.
Well, and I think that a lot of that goes back to just the mindset you have to be successful in business. And it's not just business, but especially in the business realm, if you don't have an abundance mindset, where you're willing to, as Patrick Lencioni says in his book by this name, if you're not willing to get naked and put it all out there, like, man, you're never going to win. And you're not going to help more people. You're not going to be able to actually, achieve the results by helping other people achieve their results that they're looking for. Like, you have to have that perspective. But if you're always operating in scarcity, you're always worried about like the cost, or you're worried about the time, or you're worried about the perception, like God forbid, the perception, right? And I'm saying it's like pot and kettle over here, which choir, right?
We've all gone through that journey though, of where we've thought that way, but there's always like this tangible switch where we say like, no, I'm not going to think that way anymore. I'm going to look at every situation as a particular opportunity, and I'm going to keep doing the right things over and over and over again. And we had Adam on here, and he's like, the famous quote that's actually in the intro part of this video is, like, he's not dissimilar to anybody else. He's just created regular rhythms that he does over and over and over again, and then it produces a consistent result. And ultimately, like, that's why we worked on a sales process with you and your team, because it was like we were getting inconsistent results because we were importing inconsistent behaviors into the sales process. You've got 5 or 6 advisors that you work with. All 5 or 6 of them are doing something a little different. Well, if we want consistent results that allow our business to be predictable at the end of the day, we have to put in consistent behaviors over and over and over again. And we talk all day about process and documenting a process, but that's how you do it. Like, you got to say, this is the process that works, and this is the process that we're going to be patiently committed to over and over and over again. And we're going to start to get a result that we can start to predict our business. And you know just as well as anybody from a financial standpoint, when you know the result before you spend the money, that's the best part to be in a business, because then you can start to actually spend money to make money. When you're spending money when it's coming in and you're not making any money and you don't have a predictable financial result, it's really difficult to run a business that way.
Oh, yeah.
Arguably impossible.
Yeah. Well, you can run the business until your cash runs out and until your credit line runs out. And then you're in a much worse situation, right? And like, I feel like that's a great point. It's like going back to like the processes and having, building the right systems, the right protocols in place. It just enables you to take like, I was literally on a call talking about this an hour ago. It takes the decision fatigue out, right? If I really double down on working on the business, or even like, again, not in your business, just working on yourself, to really refine what am I best at and what am I really going to be excellent at over time, and then doubling down on those specific things, that's what's going to help you launch forward to be even more successful over time.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, like, who are the companies that you work with? And they ask me, like, revenue dollars and people. And it's like, at the end of the day, honestly, the things that really matter to me is, number one, like, you have to be an owner that's patiently committed to running a process. Like, I'm going to teach you, our wheel, and you've seen our wheel 100 times. I draw it on the board every time we meet, right? But I'm going to teach you the wheel and how to think about a business. But you have to be so patiently committed to that process that we just keep running that play over and over and over again. And number two, like, you have to be willing to spend money to make money, and you have to be willing to learn and grow and have a grower's mindset as a business owner, because if you're not willing to relinquish a little bit of control of your business and learn something new, we aren't going to grow. We might grow it, but we're not going to grow at the rate that you should grow when you have the right people in place and you have the right processes in place. Those limiting beliefs can actually limit your revenue growth and your profit within a business.
100%. And I think just go back to what you said there towards the beginning, is I think the key word in all of that is patient. Because good things come to those who wait. Good things come to those who are diligent, right? And everybody, like, especially in our world, from just working with retail investors as well as business owners, not as much on the business owner side, but the retail side, is people are looking for a quick fix, right? Even me, right? Like my health, I'm not in the health that I want to be in, but I'm actively doing things about it. I was on an hour-long call with a health coaching company earlier today, and a lot of our conversation and his questions to really pre-qualify me as a fit for their business was built around, is this guy actually going to be patiently committed? And he probably asked that the same question 17 different ways over an hour's time frame.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because it's basically our sales process we built out.
Yeah.
I love it. So I knew how to like kind of play with it and keep them going, you know. But it all goes back to that patient persistence, right? And so like for those that are trying to win, and just throw this out from my side, like if you're trying to win in your wealth journey and you're not a business owner, are you patiently committed to keep buying assets that are going to go up in value even when it feels scary, right? If you're a business owner, are you patiently committed to continually carving out time and working on your processes and fixing things so you can actually set up the success? I think Adam said this on your podcast actually, was you got to build structure before you build load, right? Like, are you going to build that structure and build those disciplines so when times get tough, you can start adding load,
right?
To make yourself stronger.
Yeah,
those
exactly.
Kind of things.
So you've built this awesome business. I've been a very small slice of that pie, of that journey, which has been incredible. But what's the future look like? Where are you going? Where do you want to take it? I know that you're a part of the board for, Ramsey SmartPro and that whole system. So like, what's the future look like and where are you going with it?
Yeah, so really my vision for especially our office here in South Carolina is I want us to manage $1 billion in 10 years. What that means is we probably have 10 advisors, all of them with different size books of business. Most of them with, over $100 million they manage. And the whole point of that is like, a lot of our industry, I think it does a disservice to people because it focuses on, assets managed and income produced and all that kind of stuff. To me, like saying $1 billion, it's not really, to me that the billion doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a really big fancy number. It's a 1 with 9 zeros behind it.
Yeah.
I think, or no, 6 zeros. 9 zeros behind it.
It's a lot of zeros.
It's a lot of zeros before the decimal point, right? So like the billion number, it's a really big, hairy, audacious goal to get to because it means we've touched hundreds, if not thousands of lives to get there, right? And going back to what I said earlier, like impact and influence, that's the theme that I've seen kind of develop in my life, in our business over the years, is we're not just in this for ourselves. We want to really impact people for good and help them see real, like otherwise unachievable results by plugging into the right system to have their own success in their financial journey. So like I think, $1 billion in assets in 10 years, at least 10 advisors supporting that process. That means we're probably going to have 4 or 5 support staffs. That means hiring a lot of more people, doing a lot more community involvement, community engagement, and really high level becoming the place for retirement planning and business owner financial planning in the upstate of South Carolina. Because again, the bar is so freaking low. There's over 300,000 licensed advisors in the country right now. There's a major supply and demand issue right now because by 2034, there's going to be a 30% shortage of advisors to client need ratio. Like, there's a really interesting report put out by McKinsey & Company, the consulting firm. They released it back in February, where they showed that the trajectory is they expect there to be that 30% deficit. So you talk about supply and demand. I mean, and that's talking about like total number of licensed people. That's not even the good ones. So let's say 15% of those are good, maybe 20% on the high side. There's like a lot of those guys are going to be getting out of the business. So I see that as even further part of our vision is we want to serve a lot of people, but we got to get the right people in, and we got to get those people in now. Because in addition to that is there's this massive wealth transfer coming in the next 20 years. The number changes every day depending on what report you look at, but it's like $90 trillion of wealth is going to change hands in the next few years.
It's crazy.
I can't even fathom.
I can't even wrap my head around how many zeros that is.
That's a lot of freaking zeros, man. But it's just like, we want to be the place that people think of and they say, man, I'm so glad I worked with SmartPro Financial. So glad I worked with Patrick's team, the guys in the Greenville office. Because we already have a big impact. Like we got 95 advisors nationwide. I think as a company we manage, $1.8 billion. I'm around 70 million right now. We just want to be able to truly impact more people for good. And I'll go back to my old Boy Scout days, like leave it better than I found it. Like,
well, and you
it's-
know, at the end of the day, and we've talked about this a lot of times, like financial advice, regardless of where it comes from, should not change from person to person, firm to firm. The financial advice is the financial advice at the end of the day.
Correct.
Now, there is poor financial advice and borderline not legal financial advice. Obviously, we want to steer clear of those things. But when it comes to the legal standard, it should not change from firm to firm, person to person. But what does change, and what the most important thing is your relationship with your advisor. You guys have to be on the same page. You have to have the same goals. And they got to know where you're going, and the communication has to be there. If the communication's not there, obviously they can't help you. But at the end of the day, if the relationship is really good, that's probably a good indication that they're going to be a good advisor for you, because the advice is going to be the same regardless of where you go for the most part.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, with your team, and not to, you know, pump your tires or anything, but with your team, the experience that I've gotten up to this point has been like, you'd have to do something pretty messed up to screw up our relationship at this point, because it's been amazing. Like, everything has been seamless. You call when you say you're going to call. You show up when you say you're going to show up. You do the right things. You know, when me and my wife have a financial change in our life, you sit down with us, you have an emotional conversation, and then you have a tactical like, all of those things is so important. And if you have an advisor right now that is not providing those things, this is your guy. I will tell you right now, Patrick will take, super good care of you, but you deserve a good relationship from an advisor, not just selling products or the advice piece of it. You deserve a good relationship. You should go get that. You should seek it out.
Yeah.
So,
no, I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting in our business, because you're exactly right. Is like, the advice shouldn't change from firm to firm and from advisor to advisor. The relationship should, right? Like, you gotta find the right fit. If you can't communicate, you can't communicate.
Yeah.
That's in every business, right? Like, we literally just changed our pest company this week, because for the 6th time in a row, the guy shows up when he's not supposed to be there. He doesn't show up when he's supposed to be there. And then he gives my wife problems about it.
Yeah.
It's like, we got a 2-year-old trying to sleep at home. No, you can't show up an hour early.
Don't ring the doorbell.
You're fired. Like, sorry, Massey, you're out of our lives forever. By the way, if you need a pest company, Jordan Pest Management, that's what we're going with.
Got it.
But, you know, it's like, the advice shouldn't change, and go back, like, full circle here. But the advice does change. And I think that's the problem we have in our industry, and the perception of our industry, is you don't know if you're actually getting advice that's in your best interest.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time when I'm looking at statements for prospective clients, or, you know, talking with prospects. It's just like, our business is so sticky. Like, people just don't move accounts unless there's a really, really good reason, because a lot of times the relationship outweighs bad advice.
Yeah.
So again, for me, what I said earlier is trying to raise the bar all the time. Yeah. We're not just trying to, like, send you a bundt cake on your birthday. I actually don't do that, because I think that's kind of a waste of time and perception, because maybe you don't like bundt cake, right? Like, I want to actually find what matters most, which for most people is the results.
Yeah.
Not returns, but results.
Yeah.
Get returns too. That's table stakes, right?
Yeah.
But how do we actually get you the results to help you feel confident and at peace with your journey, so you can actually live your life?
Yeah.
Right? Like to me, that's the thing, that the relationship is so important there if we're getting the advice right to start with.
Yeah. So how can people find you? How can people interact with you? Outside of the 15 calls in 15 minutes, putting in the inquiry online.
Yeah, no, great question. So you can find me in a lot of different ways. Our company website is smartprofinancial.com. You can click on the Find a Pro button and then search my name under South Carolina. You can also reach us on my phone, 864-383-1634. My email, Patrick at SmartProUSA. That's SmartProusa.com. We're also on Instagram. Yeah, we're trying to build that, be more proactive.
And you have a podcast.
We have a podcast, the Working Wealth Podcast, which also cross-posting. Got Ren on there talking about some incredible business stuff and coaching. But yeah, I mean, just really, there's a lot of ways to reach out to us. Smoke signals don't work as well these days. There's a fire ban in South Carolina right now, so you're probably gonna get arrested if you try that. Yeah, I mean, you know, any way to reach out to us, we're there. We just want to make sure that ultimately Like my personal mission statement of this business is we partner with diligent workers, committed savers, and cheerful givers to balance the joy of living today while building and preserving generational wealth. And to me, like, that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
You know, there is always the extremists in our industry of saying you got to do this, you got to do that, and all that kind of stuff. The reality is the life is gray.
Yeah.
Like the right advice is gray. Like, there's the core fundamentals. You know, you want to be wealthy, have margin in your life, buy things that go up in value.
Yep.
It's really as simple as that.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But how you accomplish that for your situation, having that right relationship to actually partner with someone and figure out what it looks like to balance life today while building that wealth for the future.
Yeah.
That's what I try to focus on.
Well, and sometimes you got to pull the right levers from a cash flow standpoint, just like in a business. Like, sometimes we have to pull an unstandard lever to get the end result that we're looking for. I know, you know, me and my wife, there were some changes financially to our lives recently. It's like we got to pull a couple unstandard levers from a cash flow standpoint right now, not in a bad way, but just like we got to get a little off the beaten path to keep everything on track like we want to. And sometimes that has to happen. Now, again, if you don't have the right advisor, you might get the standard approach, you know, and we might just keep things like, let's just freeze everything where we're at. And it's like, well, that might not actually be the right approach. We might be able to just move money in a couple different places to make it work.
Just on that note, like, one of the things I love seeing with people is as we're talking through like a complex situation, it's like there's a major life change where you're just in the middle of the ring. Like, you're taking punches left and right. You don't know which way is up. You know, you're about to just get like pinned down, KO, like all that kind of stuff. I'm sitting on the outside of the ring saying, hey, duck, you know, like those kind of things. When we get to have those conversations and I can just give like a little perspective shift. That's all it is. It's just a little perspective shift. Yeah. And that makes everything click for someone. Like, hey, if we have a cash flow issue, this is one that comes up a lot. It's, well, why don't we just like drop down our 401k contribution for a little bit of time? We'll get back to it. It's not permanent. Let's just drop it down a little bit and free up some cash flow, pay some stuff off, get back on the horse, right? Or, hey, like, I owed 10 grand in taxes I wasn't expecting. Okay, great. Let's set aside like $400 a month, or, you know, in that case, $800 a month to save for taxes for next year. And if we can't do that, let's dig deeper. Right? Like let's actually get into the weeds, get into the mess, like wade through that river with you. But seeing those little tidbits we can give to get a perspective shift is one of my favorite things in this business. Because we're often too close. Like, we're way too close. And I think it's, let me take that to myself, you know. I think it's really important, like for someone in my position, to not just think that we know everything, because sometimes you feel like that. Like, people always come to you, like as a business owner, you're influential. People always ask you for questions and opinions and connections and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's great and all, but who's pouring into me? Right? Totally. It's like having a coach like yourself, having a coach for health, having a spiritual mentor, having friends that hold me accountable. Like, I think in life you have to have all these things working together to make sure we're always staying on track, especially if we're in a position of influence, helping other people. I don't know, that just came to me. I hope that's helpful. Like,
for sure. And a lot of people, you know, when they come to you for advice, like I made this mistake early on in my coaching career, was like, you get a little prescriptive with advice and then you realize like, oh man, if I would have asked a few more questions, I probably would have given a different prescription to that situation. But you just get in that mode of like, I want to fix it. I think one thing that you do really well, and what I feel like I do really well at this point, is like, it's a lot of question asking, and it's a lot of like seeking to understand the full truth before I prescribe an outcome. There's a lot of coaches out there that'll tell you, well, you got to do this type of accounting, or you should do this, or you should do that, and they don't know the full scope of what the struggle is, and then they give that prescription. And there's a lot of unqualified people in both of our spaces that are fresh into, you know, coaching or financial advice, that give the wrong prescription, and then they can actually do some damage to a company or to a person's finances pretty quickly, especially if a company isn't set up to make that change. There's so many people in my space that say like, oh, that's easy. You just got to run a 90-minute meeting every single week and everything goes in that meeting. And it's like, but if that company and that leadership team is not set up for that, and you don't help them execute on running a good meeting and show them what that looks like, and you just say you got to run a 90-minute meeting, you might actually do a ton of damage to that company and the culture of that company. So it's like people get prescriptive, and it's like, really, you need to ask a lot of questions to seek to understand. That's why you do an hour fit meeting. That's why I do an hour and a half fit meeting. Like, I have to understand fully what we're looking at before I can even help you. But there's too many people that get prescriptive, and it gets scary. There's a lot of unqualified people giving advice.
100%.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's where you have to, anytime you're dealing with people, you have to lead with empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't have empathy and you're not, like, if you're, and I think it comes out, right? It's like, one of the big things in the Smart Investor program with Ramsey's organization is that they want you to have the heart of a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't teach someone anything if you don't actually care about understanding why they want to learn it.
True.
So for the coaching side, for you with the business, like, one of the first things you asked us when we sat down for our consultation was, well, what are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And then the most important part of that conversation is you shut the hell up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, excuse my French, but like, you just shut up. And I think that's the thing that most people in these situations where you're having some kind of impact, you're coaching people, you're trying to solve problems, is you have to remove your own preconceived notions of what success looks like and allow people to answer that question.
Yeah.
And I can't remember where I've heard this, but I heard this probably 6 months ago. But like, life happens in the 5 seconds between a reaction and a response.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can react immediately to things that happen in my life all day long. But if I wait 5 seconds and I choose how I want to respond, it completely changes the trajectory of the circumstances.
Totally.
And I think that's one of the things I loved about our coaching experience with you, and looking forward to doing this more and more, is you just get to actually sit there. Like, for me, I get to sit there and answer questions I've never thought about, or answer them in a way that I never had an opportunity to do.
Yeah.
And actually really understand, well, what is the core thing we're looking for?
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to get there?
Yeah. There's so many times I feel like I'm not a professional problem solver. Like, just to be clear with all the business owners that watch this, I'm not a professional problem solver. But what I am good at is uncovering the problem.
Yeah.
You're the professional in your field. Like, I'm not the one that is going to solve those problems. I am the one that's going to ask the questions to uncover the problem, help you think clearly about what the solution should be, and then you go execute on the solution. I don't own a landscaping company. I'm not going to know the right thing to say, but I can definitely expose a profit problem, a P&L problem. I can expose a people problem. I can expose a process problem. I can expose all of those things, help you see something that you haven't seen before, so you can focus on the solution instead of trying to either find the problem or firefighting the problem all the time, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, dude, this was awesome. I greatly appreciate it. Obviously, we did a podcast swap. I'm looking forward to seeing yours. But this is great. If you have not interacted with Patrick at all, you have to. Sorry about your inbox and all of those things if you just get flooded with a bunch of questions. But seriously, like, you've been a game changer for me and my wife. You've been a game changer for my business. Like, I love it. Our interactions are always valuable, and this is no exception.
Yeah,
So
appreciate
thanks,
it, man.
man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.